breaking news in the world of The Walking Dead. We cannot wait to talk about it. C-Dub and JC here from Chronocord Media. Thanks for joining us. Before we go any further, here is your spoiler warning. You've got 3, 2, 1 to go watch the latest episode of The Walking Dead, episode 7, titled Heads Up, and come right back here to Chronocord Media and check out our review of the episode. C-Dub, let's get right to the big news.
Yeah, JC, Glenn is alive. This week's episode of The Walking Dead opened up with a flashback to when Nicholas committed suicide and made him and Glenn topple off of that dumpster. And just like we thought, that was Nick being ripped to shreds by the zombies. Luckily, Glenn crawled underneath a dumpster and dispatched just a couple of zombies, enough to provide a blockade for his survival, and he pretty much just waited there until they left. Smart move, Glenn.
Just as we predicted, C-Dub, I think we both mentioned that he could just crawl right under that dumpster there and probably get enough space between him and the walkers to survive. You gotta think he was out there a few days and nights without water, could have possibly been completely dehydrated, and luckily Enid comes to the rescue and drops him some bottled water. We were both wondering where this chick went when she disappeared as the wolves destroyed Alexandria, and I guess she was hiding out in this vacant town in some of the buildings.
Yeah, not very smart on Enid's part, trying to be this, dare I say, lone wolf out here surviving. She's just really, really childish. I mean, I understand being in shock since losing your parents, but Enid, you gotta get a grip on this. Of course, Glenn goes after Enid runs away from him and tries to go find her, and basically with the thought of bringing her back to Alexandria, but Enid wasn't having it, JC.
And on the way back to find Enid, he saw Dave's corpse, and Glenn found the note that Dave meant to give to his widow. We're back at Alexandria now, and Rick sees the blood dripping through the wall, and you can tell he's kind of formulating a plan, A, to get these walkers away from the wall to relieve the stress on them, and B, he should probably start reinforcing the other side of the wall on the inside of Alexandria. But C-Dub, I gotta say, the most disturbing scene in this episode was probably when Rick was teaching Ron how to handle a gun, how to load it and everything. And Carl was there, and Carl was kind of being tough on Ron, but for good reason. Definitely was feeling a very creepy tension, though, throughout that whole scene.
Yeah, JC, I have to assume that this scene between Ron and Carl, and as well as Rick, it has to be some kind of foreshadowing. I don't think that was a very good moment of judgment for Rick to just give Ron that Glock 19, even though he didn't give him any bullets. I mean, probably not good to arm someone like Ron. I mean, we saw how volatile his dad is, or rather, how volatile his dad was. I have a strange sneaking suspicion, JC, that this is going to be a situation that Ron and Carl are going to have to deal with very, very soon.
So Rick has been asking Morgan if they can have a moment and talk, and they finally do, and basically Rick is wanting to know why he let those wolves go. He tells them that the wolves confronted him at the RV, almost killed him, and there's a big discussion about whether Morgan can even stay in Alexandria with the mindset that he cannot kill anyone else. Rick also lets Michonne in on his plan, or the beginnings of his plan, to try to get the zombie herd away from the walls. And Rick wants to keep it between them, between only his group. And Michonne is kind of wondering why. She thinks that everyone should know. And Deanna comes up and starts sharing her quickly crafted plans that she drew in a previous episode. Rosita's out there training some of the Alexandrians in hand-to-hand combat, and Eugene is back to his cowardly ways, C-Dub.
Eugene is going to have to man up and stop being such a little sissy. He's going to have to take control, and I mean, as long as the walls are there, he's okay, as long as no more wolves come, but Eugene's rate of survival and his chances probably not so good outside of Alexandria whenever he doesn't have a babysitter. We then go back to Glenn and Enid. Glenn is on the hunt for Enid and asking her some questions, trying to track her down, find out more about the status of Maggie and Alexandria. He can't find Enid throughout the town, but he finally does in this old, nasty, abandoned building. As Enid's looking out the door, Glenn grabs her around the mouth and pulls her away and shuts the door. Man, JC, I gotta say, I thought that was gonna be a wolf or somebody bad. You guys got me. Nevertheless, Glenn says, now it's time to go. We're going back to Alexandria. He insists and starts to get a little bit forceful with Enid there. But Enid pulls out a gun, puts it right onto Glenn and says, I'm not going. However, Glenn calls her bluff. JC grabs the gun, moves it away, takes it from her, and says, let's go.
And on the way back, they find some balloons left over from the quarry operation, the green balloons, and they decide to inflate more of them so they can use them as a beacon to show that they are alive, or at least Glenn is alive, as he told Michonne. Back in town now, Rick is reinforcing the walls from the inside, and Tobin comes up and admits that he and other Alexandrians were scared of Rick and his gang when they first arrived, but now he's asking Rick to not give up on them and help them out with surviving. So now Rick's move to give Ron a gun comes back to potentially bite everyone in the ass. Ron creates a distraction in the pantry so he can sneak into the armory and steal some bullets. C-Dub, this has trouble written all over it.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Ron hopefully grabbed the right caliber of bullets. Gotta assume that with him not knowing too much about guns, he might not have even grabbed the right bullets. At this point, JC, Glenn and Enid make it back to just outside of Alexandria's walls, and they see that the herd has the place completely surrounded and soon realize that they won't be able to just walk right through the gate. Enid begins to pretty much give up and Glenn gives her a pep talk. It seems like maybe Glenn has finally got her to come around, and now that Nick is gone, Glenn has taken on a new understudy in getting them to stop freaking out and start staying alive.
And in this week's bonehead moment on The Walking Dead, we see Spencer trying to climb over all the zombies to make his way out of Alexandria. What the hell are you doing, man? He barely escaped that situation, and Rick is chastising him, and Tara luckily was there and provided him some cover. I mean, he was completely surrounded. I thought there was no chance he could survive this. Maybe he was on the sauce again, C-Dub.
Very well could be, JC. This, for the hardcore Walking Dead fans who have read the comics, this was a adaptation of one of those scenes from the comics, from Alexandria, and I thought that they did it very, very well here on screen. Tara luckily was there to help Spencer out and provide a little bit of cover fire, but Rick wasn't too happy with her spur-of-the-moment decision, and for Rick's troubles, he got a big ol' California howdy.
So C-Dub, earlier in the episode, Morgan went over to the town doctor, Denise, still clueless it seems, and he's kind of trying to get her in on the secret of having the wolf captive. And he convinces her to come over and take a look. He wants to get meds for the guy so he can live. Fortunately, Carol was right on top of everything.
Yeah, JC, I think that between this sit down that Morgan had with Rick, Michonne, and Carol, and as well as this ploy that he has to acquire medicine from Denise and take to this captive wolf who is injured. I don't know if this is just Morgan trying to not go back to how crazy Morgan was after he left his home in King County, or if this really is Morgan's new way of life and he honestly expects to be able to survive without killing anybody.
And Morgan had every chance in that previous meeting with Rick and Carol and Michonne to reveal that he had the prisoner, but he did not. And now I think that's just going to cause a huge amount of tension between Rick and Morgan, especially after that conversation. So Carol is eavesdropping and watching Morgan get Denise over to see the wolf, and she takes Judith over to Jesse's house to be watched. And she has an encounter with her old friend, Sam, the Cookie Monster.
Seems like Carol was giving Sam, as she always does, a nice little reality check. She basically tells him that the only way to stop yourself from becoming a monster is to kill the monsters. Sam seemed a little bit confused as to whether the monsters are the people, like the wolves who attacked, or if the monsters are the walkers. But I thought that was a pretty poignant moment for Carol, and I have a feeling it had a lasting impression on young Sam.
And here we have reached the pinnacle of the episode. We see Ron following Carl in the street with the gun in his belt. And we see Michonne looking at the plans from Deanna for the expansion in Alexandria. But throughout this episode, we kept seeing a crumbling building, obviously in disrepair. Boards were falling off of it. And we see that again as Rick and Tara are being thanked by Deanna for saving Spencer earlier. And then all of a sudden, C-Dub, the big moment, everyone sees those green balloons in the sky. Maggie, Rick, Michonne, they all know it's Glenn. But then at that same moment of happiness and joy, you know there has to be something bad right around the corner. And it ends up being that crumbling building falling over and into the wall. Oh no, C-Dub.
Yeah, JC, unfortunately, it looks like it took out at least 2 or 3 panels of the wall. Even considering the wreckage that may lay there, that's plenty of room for the herd to squeeze through. The era of peace for Alexandrians within the walls has come crashing down and is now over. Next week, episode 8, the mid-season finale. I have a feeling that Alexandria will be no more. It will be reduced to just a pile of rubble in no time and turned into a ghost town. Rick, Deanna, and everybody else within Alexandria has to get the heck out of there. And really my biggest question is, we know that Glenn and Enid are not too far away. How will they rendezvous with the rest of the group? What's going to happen to that captive wolf that's wounded? We know that Carol is on to Morgan and Denise's operation. JC, so many questions left unanswered, and hopefully we'll get some closure next week in episode 8, start to finish.
I think we'll finally see the showdown between Carl and Ron, and I hope Judith will be okay. She was left in the protection of Jesse and Sam, so who knows? Cannot wait for this mid-season finale next week. Everyone make sure to tune in to our review of episode 8.
Folks, that's going to do it for our recap of Walking Dead Season 6, Episode 7, Heads Up. If you have not already, please subscribe to Chronocord Media and make sure to drop us a comment below, letting us know what you expect for Episode 8 of Season 6. For my co-host JC, I am C-Dub. Don't get bit.